I commend this bill to the House.
Mr. Chair.
I'm going to call the Honourable Member Materia Ture.
Mr. Chairman, I just want to thank my colleague Tracy Martin for her very detailed analysis of the impacts of this legislation, that her experience in having worked on a school board and being a member of a school board for many years now really does add weight to the concerns about this charter schools legislation. It really is up to us to seriously consider the expertise of those who are involved with schools every day, teachers, principals, boards of trustees, and indeed the parents of children at schools when we are making decisions about their children's education. And that is clearly not the case here. The charter schools is not the result of evidence-based information from the experts in education. That's right, it's John Banks, a man who's currently, I understand, still in court. John, instead of the government knows. Let's go back to basics. The government is saying that there is a tale of underachievement. It's a terrible phrase. That there are kids who aren't doing as well in the state school system as they ought to, and they're looking for options to fix that. OK, that's a fair enough intention. But the fact is that instead of looking at the evidence, including the evidence not only of experts in education, but also actually the evidence from the Ministry of Education itself as to what will work for these kids, they have gone to John Banks to look for evidence and information as to what he thinks. This one-man band from a dying party is now setting the education agenda for hundreds and hundreds of children, with the potential actually to impact on thousands and thousands of children, because as we know, John Banks was very explicit when he said he wants to privatise the public education system. His intention is to turn, not just to create a few charter schools over the next year or so, but to turn every state school into a private school as a means of funneling cash out of the public coffers into the hands of the very wealthy few. Well, National, we know, is very keen on that idea. We've seen them do that over and over again, particularly in this budget. But that is where the evidence is coming from, the information. And it is a tragedy for schools and a tragedy for the children who will be subjected to this terrible experiment. Because if we actually look at the evidence, first the evidence of failure. The best evidence from the US about charter schools, the most independent evidence, shows that only 17% of the charter schools in the US do better than the public system. That is less than 1 in 5. Less than 1 in 5. So for every 5 charter schools that will be set up under this ridiculous proposal from John Banks, we can expect 4 will fail to meet the standard of public schools, and only 1, if we're lucky, because it's not quite 1 in 5, only 1, if we're lucky, will do better than any state school. So why would you waste money giving away money, cash, to somebody that's not been tested, that doesn't have any educational experience, because they can make a profit? Why would we experiment with the desperately needed cash that we have in education on 4 failed schools out of 5? At the best. But not only that, not only is there such a high failure rate of charter schools internationally, but we have to consider the children that are being considered. And Tracy Martin is right. The schools are being funded at decile 3, but actually there's no restriction to make sure that the school is set in a decile 3 area, that they take children who are particularly vulnerable, because they have to have an open role. So what happens is, of course, there'll be kids that will go to the school, and instead of having an enrolment process to lock out kids, what those schools have done overseas is have a push-out process. So they don't stop kids coming in, but they have a very, very clever measures to kick kids out. Kids who are likely to fail, kids that are too expensive, kids whose families are demanding higher standards from that charter school. Those kids get kicked out of charter schools everywhere else in the world where charter schools are set up. And it's done through all sorts of ridiculous rules, through funding rules, through behaviour rules, through process rules, enrolment rules. They all impact on the child once the child is part of that school. So we will certainly see charter schools cherry-picking students by a push-out process even where this government is saying that they have to take any student that comes to them. They don't have to keep them. They might have to take them, they don't have to keep them. And we will see more and more of our kids who this program is supposed to be targeted at being abandoned, yet, Mr Chair. Mr Chair,
Materia Ture.
Being abandoned, thank you, Mr Chair, being abandoned yet again. The concern I have, of course, is that we do have successful models, Indigenous models of schooling for those very kids that the government says they're so concerned about. They are the kura kaupapa Māori. They are the bilingual units like Kiaroha in South Auckland. I don't know if anyone's been, we've been there a few times now. It is a fantastic, innovative, clever state school that provides the best, highest quality education for Māori and Pacific kids in that area. What college was that? Maharangi College. Highest achieving of Māori and Pacific kids. We know that when state schools are given the opportunity to be innovative, to reflect the needs of their community and are given the resources and the support they need, they will do good for our kids. So why would we then impose a new model that is experimental? Well, we know why, because actually this government just wants to funnel public money into the private sector. They're quite happy to keep funneling public money into the private sector as fast as they can, and charter schools is one way of doing it. The other thing that works is ko tahitanga and kahikatea. And in the briefing to the Minister, when she first took her role, the Ministry of Education said that if you want to deal with the tale of underachievement and particularly focus on Māori children, then properly resource, fund, support, promote kahikatea and ko tahitanga. What have they done? They cut it. They just chopped it right off. They're now saying that they're going to do something else. Who knows what that is? Again, it's another experiment on the kids who need us the most. So instead of doing exactly what they know works, what's proven to work, what the experts say is working, what the ministry itself is saying is working, no, they're going to do what John Banks thinks. And what John Banks wants is the full-scale privatisation of this education system. Sir, I would like to hear from the Minister and the Chair a guarantee from her that no school that has been closed will be given or provided to a charter school for their use. I would like some guarantee that the school closures that we are seeing around, not just in Christchurch, but will continue to see around the country over the next 18 months, that not a single one of those closed schools will be used for a charter school. Because what? Sorry? Yeah, that's right. Because there is no requirement, the Minister has no requirement to consider the whole network of schools when they're looking at setting up a charter school. So it's quite possible, and I think quite likely, that this government will go around closing state schools, likely see them doing, and then providing those resources, those school resources, for the establishment of charter schools. And nothing in the bill stops it. Because the one protection, which is taking a network approach to the establishment of new schools, is gone under this bill. The Minister does not have to consider the network, and so I have a supplementary order paper to restore that requirement in this legislation, so that the Minister has to consider the existing network of schools before they establish a charter school. It is a small step, a small protection, but it will mean that the Minister simply cannot close a state school and then hand over that entire resource to some cowboy from who knows where who wants to set up a school because he knows there's profit in it. Some cowboy who'll bring in some crazy curriculum from who knows where, imported from some mad place around the world, who knows where from, to deliver to our kids who do not need this experiment. But that's what they're going to do. That's what's going to happen. They'll close existing state schools, they'll hand over that property, and some cowboy is going to come in and be able to experiment on our kids. I think Tracy Martin was also right to raise another serious concern, that if a teacher, or a so-called teacher, in one of these schools who is not registered, commits some kind of crime or other abuse against a student, there is no protection for that child, and there is no protection for any other child in any other charter school. They are deliberately putting children at risk, because they will not provide for registered teachers in charter schools. How shameful is that? That this government would deliberately put the most vulnerable children at risk, because that's who they say these schools will apply to, of any predator, and have no process at all for managing that person.
I call the honourable member Grant Robertson.
Thank you very much, Mr Chair. I think it's very important when we look at part one